Okay, welcome everyone. This is Music 7. We have our guest speaker, Professor Tae-Hong Park here. And let me give a brief introduction to Professor Tae-Hong Park. So born in Vienna, Austria, Dr. Tae-Hong Park is a composer, bassist, and music technologist. Dr. Park received his bachelor's degree of electric engineering from Korea University, MA from Dartmouth College, and a PhD from Princeton University. Dr. Park's current research interests primarily lie in the composition of electroacoustic and acoustic music, signal processing, computer-aided music analysis, cyber-physical systems, soundscapes, and new media studies. His music has been heard in various locations, including Austria, Brazil, China, Canada, France, Germany, Holland, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Mexico, South Korea, Slovenia, Sweden, UK, and the USA, at venues, conferences, and various festivals. Dr. Park has been involved in a number of startup projects, including MicroDAO, and is currently working with the Vital Audio and Get Noisy startups at CSO and CTO. His work has been funded by various organizations, including Google, IBM, NSF, the Korea Foundation, and UNESCO. Dr. Park served as a board member of SEAM US. Yeah, it's EAMUS. So it's the Society for Electrical Acoustic Music in the United States. Chief editor of the journal, SEMUS, and currently serves as an editorial consultant for Computer Music Journal. He has also served 3 terms as president of ICMA, International Computer Music Association, chaired the 2006, 2018, and 2019 ICMC, International Computer Music Conference, and has served as chair of ICAD 2013, SID 2015, and NoiseGate 2016 conferences. He is author of Introduction to DSP, Computer Musically Speaking, published in 2010. It's also one of our readings in this course. After teaching at NYU, New York University, for more than a decade, he is now an associate professor and chair of the newly formed Department of Music at Purdue University. Okay, so this is a brief introduction to Professor Tae-Hong Park. Now, let me give the meeting to Dr. Park, and he can give us the lecture. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you can share the screen now, I think.
Good. So I'll share my screen, and let's make it as fun and interesting as possible, as humanly possible. Let's see, share sound. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the
Very
screen.
good. Yeah, so if you can enable your microphones, if you have any questions, just let me know and interrupt as you wish. So and I was thinking what to present today, and understand this is like an intro class to music, computers, and machines, and sound and audio. So I think the keynote talk I gave at this year's ICMC, which is the International Computer Music Conference, it was held in Seoul, Korea. I think that would actually be a pretty topically resonating story that I can tell you about today. So here we go. It'll be pretty informal. So what I'll talk about today is this idea of computer music, computers, and computer music, and how I got to this place in a sort of very unlikely journey that is still ongoing. So as Jingwei mentioned, I'm currently at Purdue in West Lafayette, Indiana. So from the Big Apple to the Big Ten. right? So, and I used to teach at Tulane University for about 8 years. So from the Big Easy, Big Apple, Big Ten. So if that's a pattern, let's see where I'll be in 10 years. Big something. Anyway, so how did I get here? And I would say it's literally around 1974. I was actually living in Bonn, Germany at that time. I was a little kid, and I think in the US, the washing machines used to have the lids on top, right? And in Europe, in Germany, the lids were always like this way. So we could actually see the thing spinning. There was like a little window. In America, you have them these days as well. I think courtesy of Samsung and LG. I think it's a front load, not top load thing. So this sort of spinning thing was always kind of interesting to me. And if you sort of think about the washing machine spinning really quickly, then you can hear a pitch, right? So that I think that's sort of the journey. And apparently, I asked my mom, like, when you're done using the washing machine or no longer, if you're no longer using it, can I have it so that I can build a helicopter? I think that's what I asked her. And I remember that. So I think I would say even from early on, I was very interested in things that are oscillating, repeating, and spinning. And I think it's a great story in a sense. And door to music actually started very late. I wasn't trained as a musician. I didn't go to the conservatory or a music school or anything like that. Although I think in German schools and Austrian schools and European schools, and I would say East Asian, Far East Asian schools in general, music education is part of the general curriculum. And in German, it goes all the way up. So I did get training that way, but it's kind of like having an English class or a history class. It was in that context. But in high school, I was living in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia at that time. I lived there for 2 years, and there was this occasion there was a friend who wanted to perform, right? And he was writing his own songs, and he's like, "Hey, I need a bassist." So I raised my hand, and that's how it started. So I went out and bought an Ibanez RB 850, I think. This is a long time ago, so my memory is kind of vague, but I still have that bass. It's a white bass, and I used to save a lot of money. I still do. I don't like to spend money unnecessarily. And I still have my skateboard from fourth grade. It's still here somewhere and it's still operational. And that's what I did back in the day. I bought my first electric bass and started to play, and it was very challenging. I thought it would be easy because it's just four strings, right? The low E, A, uh, D and G, but soon I found out it's actually even more difficult to play than a guitar. Actually, a quick question to you guys. Why do you think maybe it's not, but why would you think I say it's more difficult to play than a guitar? Question. Feel free. There's no correct or right answer or incorrect answer, but yeah, you can put in the chat. You can also do it in real time. Thicker strings, very good point. Thicker strings are more difficult to pluck for sure. And you get blisters, right hand and left hand. That's a really good reason, and that's actually true. If you ever have had the opportunity to play a double bass, it's tough. It's tough to play because the thing is so huge and the strings are like so thick. It's kind of crazy. Another reason why it's difficult to play, do you think? Versus the guitar, for example. Okay.
Anyone ever played bass here?
Uh,
Yeah, I don't know, but because
yeah,
I never play bass or guitar, so
yeah,
yeah, I have no experience.
I would say it's not even not one can sort of guess why it might be more difficult. On a guitar, generally you have six strings, right? On a bass, you have four strings. So I would say it's actually even more difficult to play on a single stringed instrument. To do something interesting with one string is difficult to do. And an instrument that has no strings, even more difficult to do. I don't know what to do there, actually. So as the number of strings gets smaller and smaller and smaller, the more difficult it is to do something interesting, right? So like a computer, you can do so many different things. That's another problem. You can do everything, and everything is actually almost the same as nothing in a sense. So it's this inverse relationship. But so I thought because it's just four strings and it doesn't play, you don't play that much. It's the bass, right? The fundamentals. Fundamentals are the most difficult things to master because they are so simple on the surface, but so deep and foundational in reality, right? Anyway, so I thought that was really great because for some reason I like to be challenged and I like things to be difficult so that why else would you do it if it's so easy? Then I don't know. It's no fun to a certain degree. So that's my door to music, and I started composing even when I uh, joined the band, adamant in writing my own songs, which was kind of strange. And I guess in a sense that is perhaps why I became a composer later on, but much later on. Um, so after that, this was in high school in Malaysia. I went to high school in back to Germany actually that was in Bonn. So I went to Bonn, and after graduating from high school, went to Korea. That was from 1998 to until 1988 till 1995. And the reason it's that long is that in Korea, you have to serve in the military, right? So, and that's one of the reasons I took a bit of time. But a little bit background on this narrative story regarding Door to Music. So in college, there are all these interesting music festivals, and there was one that was actually televised live on TV. So I got involved with that. So before there was American Idol, there was this thing called the Kangrengaije. So that was in 1992, and we were one of the finalists, and that's really got me into making music as a performer, composer, and informing bands and whatnot. So after that, I joined LG Electronics Research Lab right after college, and essentially was a geek by day and musician by night, and there was nothing in between. So doing two things, and that really takes 130% of all your time. And I formed this band called Net back in the day. That was in 1995, 6-ish. And this is that band. You can see me here when I was 3 years old. My two band members, drums and keyboards. So I was on the bass, also played the guitar in the recordings, some keyboards, all electronics, and also vocals because the other two really were not that great. And let's see, should I play? Yeah, I think I can play one of the songs that I had. So the Net was a trio, and the computer was essentially a fourth member of the band, right? So the reason I used the computer was that I couldn't really express the music that I wanted to with just three members. And I didn't want to have a 50,000 person band. So how do you do it? You bring in the computer. This is in the like mid 1990s, mind you, right? So the DSP is basically not, everything is non-real time and everything is slow. So, but how do you sort of integrate that into this sort of trio? And that's the network, right? And I was thinking that the internet was becoming a big thing. It was not a big thing in the 1990s. So I thought that would be a great name, but that was a mistake because now everything is net. So it's not a great bad name because I was too clever for myself. Um, and interesting observation is the John Chowning effect. And I use a lot of FM synthesis based synthesizers, in particular the Yamaha SY77, which is this advanced FM synthesizer. Also use physical modeling based synthesis called, there was a synthesizer called the VL1. It's Virtual Lead 1. I think it was like $5,000 in 1995. So I used that, and in a sense, there was this connection with the computer music world already, although I didn't know that, right? So I was using things that were invented and developed at these academic institution, and this was developed over at Stanford, you guys' neighbors. Um, so as I said, I wanted to sort of make the live sound equal to the studio recordings without having 50,000 people on the stage. And here's a song that I wrote, and I think it has like maybe this album has 8, 9 songs, and here's one, and I'll just play this briefly. And let me know if you can hear something. Ah, that. So this is 1996-ish. That's what this is on saxophone. You know, the vocals, believe it or not. Actually, most difficult to sing and play bass, which I found again very challenging. This is what we sounded like live too. There's very little difference between live and studio. Nowadays, K-pop is a big thing. I wouldn't say this is K-pop, but I had no idea that K-pop was kind of interesting. Because we didn't have a guitar player in a live setting, I had to play a bass solo. Here comes the bass solo. And so on and so forth. And if you look at, if you search YouTube, you can find it somewhere. I will not tell you where, but it's there. Somebody uploaded it, and there's other songs on that album from 99 megahertz and higher. It's the best album ever made. Okay, so as I said, after high school in Bonn, Germany, I went to Korea and Seoul, entered Korea University. My major was in EECS, electrical engineering, computer science, worked at LG Electronics. And at LG Electronics, this is not that well known. We used to make keyboards. So here's one that we built, and this was called GS 1000. And we were working on a GS 3000 that had like touch screens and things like that. It was actually pretty cool, but and you guys probably have not heard of LG Electronics keyboards and synthesizers, and that is probably the reason why that was shut down. But you learn a lot by building these things, right, from the ground up, including the keyboard itself, the velocity based mechanisms and all the sounds that you have to create via PCM sampling or FM or other synthesis methods. And after that, after the keyboard um, journey, I also was involved for about 2 years in building and implementing voice codecs, right? Voice coder decoders. That's also related to Bell Labs, where LPC comes from, linear predictive coding, which is used for telephony, where basically you use an FIR filter, fast finite impulse response. I was going to say fast Fourier transform, but not the case. So a finite impulse response, which means that there's no feedback components in predicting the current samples. It's basically you learn from history to predict the present. That's LPC, and that's how the voice codec works. And I was doing that for about 2 years. And then I was thinking, well, all this stuff is great. So musician by night, geek by day. Can I sustain this? And yes, back in the day, I was able to do it. And like with 4 hours of sleep for like a couple of years is not really that sustainable. But when you're young, you can do an all-nighter and be up the next day and run around like a rabbit. As you get older, the running around like a rabbit gets a bit more difficult. But I was also thinking, how can I merge both my musical interests and my engineering and technical interests? So that brought me back to school in 1998, and I was able to merge music and engineering, learn and teach, and do research, right? This is essentially a hobby of mine, being a professor, essentially, and very fortunate to be in this position for sure, because in a sense, I never graduated, right? So, so this took me to grad school. So I did my master's over at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, and you can do three things in Hanover, New Hampshire, or at Dartmouth. One is you can study, and the second one is you can study, and the third thing is you can study. So only three major things you can do. And then if you want to get some interesting culture and whatnot, then you have to like drive down to Boston. That's like 3.5 hours. And there's a Dartmouth mini coach that goes back and forth, but had no time for that. So this was like perfect for me because the studying was basically what I was interested in. And that was from 1998 till 2000. Then I went to Princeton to do my PhD. And during the early days at Dartmouth, I was very much interested in physical modeling. And this is from a magazine from Keyboard, and it said, the next big thing. This is from 1994. But I don't think physical modeling became such a big thing, at least compared to FM synthesis, right? I think FM synthesis, the DX7 is probably one of the most popular and the most commercially successful synthesizers ever. The physical modeling also came out of Stanford, CCRMA, but I don't think it took off as crazily as FM. So this is from my master's thesis, all written in Java. Java was the thing back in the day. I think nowadays is Python. So there's always these changes in languages, which is kind of funny. And I sort of basically decided that I would write most of my things in JavaScript because it's operating system agnostic. Just run it on a web browser so that you don't have to rewrite the code. And it's actually kind of convenient. So you can actually concentrate on the subject matter rather than whether it does like a core dump or doesn't compile, and then the operating system gets updated and nothing works, and this binary, that binary doesn't work. So I don't want to waste my time there. And of course that's interesting in itself as well, but that's not where my interest lies. So after Princeton, or during those times, these folks were my teachers, and essentially all wonderful people that helped me in uh, navigating that space and place and getting to where I am right now. And that's John Appleton, Larry Polanski, Charles Dodge, Eric Lyon, Quay Dong, who's still at Dartmouth, Charlie Sullivan, who was actually went to Princeton and then became a professor at Dartmouth and did some physical modeling. Thomas Corman, who wrote the White Bible, the algorithms book, used in every computer science program, and Jamshid Barucha in psychoacoustics. Um, and I think I can play you some more pieces, but I think I'll just skip that. Maybe I'll play you this one. This was kind of interesting. So as you can imagine, the song that you heard is where my mind space was, but I wanted to do something different, right? And this was one of the first attempts in writing something different. And this piece called Machine Stops came by um, um, integrating topics that I was learning in a DSP class. So aliasing, harmonic distortion, and all these things that I was learning in DSP, I wanted to apply into a musical composition. So that's what this is, and it's called machine stop. I'll just play a little bit of that. Maybe you can sort of identify some of those DSP artifacts. And the entire thing is built on one tiny sinusoid, a sine wave. I think it's 400 hertz. Then you do all these DSP processes on. And there's that sine wave that I used to create all these modulations, manipulations, and changes to it. Harmonic distortion right there, right? Then you'll probably hear some aliasing. And so on and so forth. So again, a fun way to inform my music. So the technical research informing my music. This is sort of like a theme in the things that I do. It's not like technical in music. It's actually each informing each other. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
actually, I just want to
yeah.
see that we talked a lot about physical modeling and aliasing these things in this course. Yeah,
Good.
previously, so everything is just related to our course
Yeah,
content.
yeah, and
Yeah, physical modeling and sound waves and
yeah,
keyboard, guitar, and also aliasing. And we also talked about beating. So I also
indeed.
identified some beating effect in your
Yeah,
previous
and
conversation.
and that
Yeah,
piece also has beating effects and yeah, as I was saying, I think it's a lot of fun when you can sort of use your right brain and left brain and have them inform each other and not keep them separate. I would say that's the sort of best sort of indication of what I think computer music should be, right? It's computer music. It's not computer and music. It's like computer music. Two things. It's music technology. It's not music technology. They're not separate things. How do you
yeah.
That's the idea. It's not easy to do, I would say. And I'm not saying I'm doing it well either, but at least that's my mindset. And I think in some ways, I think that's kind of lacking these days, to be quite honest, in academia. It's either you have music or you have technology, like MIR, right? Music information retrieval. It's like so segregated from artistic endeavors in many ways and vice versa. I think I was lucky enough to be in school where that wasn't the case actually back in the day. And I was very lucky to be in that environment. And my teachers really sort of allowed or provided a platform for that type of inquiry. So back to Princeton, where Polanski and Perry Cook were my main professor. So neural networks, machine learning, and I was very interested in developing a neural network. This is before CNNs and all the AI craziness. So this was in 2000, like 24 years ago, when AI and neural networks was not a thing. And I like to do things that people don't do, actually. So it's the opposite. When everybody does this, I don't do that. I do something else because I just don't like to follow other people. And I think that's the artist in me. Why do something that everybody else does? I think it's a good I mean, I shouldn't say that. I think there are many good reasons why you should do things that others do. But I think it's more interesting to do something else where it's basically unknown or it's less known so that you can sort of explore and not be in a huge pot with 10,000 other people doing the exact same thing, which is interesting, but I sort of went the other way. Um, Yeah, that's a single hidden layer. Exactly. And it worked really well. So I'll give you the results and how that worked. And I was very surprised by that too. But this RBF, so radial basis function elliptical. So radial is like circular, right? Or if it's hypersphere, and then elliptical becomes like this. So it would sort of create these hyperspaces that are not just radial but elliptical. And I think that's why it worked well and was used for face recognition. And from that sort of looking at at an image or the spectrogram, right, or the MFCCs, that's the approach. I thought, well, it's just a spectrogram or like a STFT. Will it do a good job? And it did actually do a pretty good job. And this is the result. So I had like 12 instruments. And it was around 71%. So it's not that great if you think about it. But in those days, it wasn't too bad. And so across 12 classes, and for the instrument families like brasses, woodwinds, strings, it did actually like 88%. Some 20 some years ago, which was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. And everything was written in MATLAB at that time because yeah, I'm sort of uh, I find MATLAB useful because I used it in college, I used it in grad school, and I still use it as a professor, which means it'll probably stay here for another at least 30 years. I'm not so much interested in languages, is what I'm trying to say. Although I did speak five. Now I speak only three languages, human languages. But that's not my interest. I use language to communicate, not to be like, oh, this language is better than the other language, or this is the best language, or whatever. I have no interest in that at all, actually. Um, yeah, yeah, for sure. And I might get into that a little bit more. And as I was doing research in neural networks and musical timbre and all these feature extraction techniques, I also wrote some music along those lines. And here's one piece, piece for orchestra, and it's how would you pronounce this? Can somebody pronounce this? This is the title of the piece. Was written in 2003 when I was very much engaged in neural networks, AI, and musical timbre. How would you pronounce this title?
And you okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
That's why what I want people to think. So it stands for ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release. But I made it so that it sounds very fancy. So ADSR is this envelope that you get for musical sound, right? The attack, decay, sustain, release. So it's ADSR, but it's actually ADSR. And the piece itself is structured around the notion of attack, decay, sustain, release, and all the spectral and time domain characteristics. So this is my attempt in expressing ADSR through the orchestra. And I like silence in pieces. It makes people feel awkward. I love that. And the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra read the piece. I don't think they were very happy to do all these strange techniques, which was interesting. Like microtonal pitch changes. You're still in the attack. Let's fast forward a little bit, then you get into the sustain portion. Yeah, and I'll stop here. And essentially, attack is very noisy, right? A lot of chaos. A decay is the sort of uh, space between chaoticness and steady state, right? Where the harmonics really are very stable. And then you have the release where you lose energy and the high harmonics die away, and you sort of essentially get the fundamentals and maybe the first harmonic, second harmonic, and then it dies away. And everything's actually based on the Fibonacci series. If you know of the golden mean, it's based on that. Is that important? No, not at all. Can you hear it? No, you can't. I cannot hear it, and I don't expect others to hear it, but why would I then use the Fibonacci series? Good question. Why do you think I use the Fibonacci series in this particular piece? Why self-inflict this pain?
Is it like there's elegant like harmonics, I guess?
That could be the case, but that wasn't actually why. So I basically did like a Fibonacci series on the pitch classes, and I did a modulo 12. So that's how I got the pitches. The timestamps are all Fibonacci numbers, so vertical and horizontal. So it is related to that, but that wasn't the reason. The main reason I employed Fibonacci series is that it forced me to do something I did not want to do. And why would I do that? Because I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. So I forced myself to put myself into this weird situation, and I got to figure out to make that music work in this strange number system I sort of constrained myself. And you do things that also surprise you, but it still is your piece because you make it, right? So that's one of the reasons I employ these systems in my pieces, so that I would try not to do the same thing over and over again, because it becomes a little boring. Let's see. Here's another piece that I did around 2002, already 22 years old. It's called Viper, and it's for two instruments and electronics. What are the two instruments? Wild guess. The piece is called Viper.
Violin and percussion.
Yes, very good.
Oh, really?
Jingwei is I think one of the most intelligent people that I know. So
Nah, best guess.
there we
best
go.
guess.
I'm not surprised that she was able to figure it out. But yeah, all my pieces are the titles have, if you just look at the title, you should be able to figure out what the piece is about, actually. So PHSQ is what? What instruments?
Did you use liquid and squares?
No, that's what engineers would say. It's just piano, horn, and string quartet, actually.
Oh, okay.
But so I do use the PHSQ, like a pH value thing, sort of like, oh, look there, but you shouldn't look there. You should look over here. Anyway, that's PHSQ. Viper is for violin and percussion. It sounds like, and this was my attempt to do something like a piece that sounded like a drum and bass piece. This is my attempt at that. It's good to listen to this with good speakers, actually. If you have a chance later on, because there's a lot of dynamic range in my pieces. This is like a col legno with col legno, if you know about string technique. Legno with your thumb on the strings. Whoa! What happened? Sorry. You guys know this software called Super Collider? There's Max, MSP, that's the Milliputty thingy. There's a thing called Super Collider. Check it out. It's a free software, and most of it was written in Super Collider, except for the drum. It's like drum and bass. It's a genre of music where the drum is really, it's not supposed to be played by humans. Very machine. The entire thing is very machine. It goes on for a little while. All type patterns. All the rhythm. It goes on for a little. So that was Viper. So yeah, so just incorporating all these little things. So after graduating from Princeton, getting my PhD there, I think it took me like 4 years, and yeah, I didn't want to stay in school longer. I wanted to graduate and do my thing. So the first job I got was at Tulane University in New Orleans, the Big Easy. If you haven't been, try to go to New Orleans. So it's a very special place, very unique place. It's almost like a different country. So I was there for about 8 years, from 2004, 5 till 2010 or so. I spent 1 year at Georgia State University in Atlanta, also known as Hotlanta. It's very hot there. And then I stayed at NYU for about 11, 12 years until last fall. And now at Purdue, I think less than a year, almost a year, actually nearing 1 year as we speak, because I started here in fall 2023. Some of the synthesis projects that I've been involved with is this thing called FMS. It's not frequency modulation and synthesis. It's feature modulation synthesis. And I was hoping that the reason it's this is a joke, obviously, but I always make fun of this. In 1,000 years, people will be confused between FM synthesis, the real one by John Chowning, and my FM synthesis. So let me show you what it does. It's still, let's see, still works in MATLAB, I think, I hope. And it's a prototype, and I haven't touched it since 2008 or 9. But I think it still works, which is pretty amazing, to be quite honest. Let's see if it runs. Yeah, and contrary to popular belief, you can do a lot of things in MATLAB. You can do most things in MATLAB, including real-time stuff. People say that's not possible, but that's because they don't know what they're talking about, essentially. You can build GUIs like this as well. And everything is written basically more or less in Java, right? So the back engine is actually all Java. So I'll just play you a little bit of some examples as to get an idea of what this actually does. Here, let's see if we can hear the sound. So that's a drum sound, right? Did somebody nod? That's a drum sound, really? It's a flute sound, right? So what feature modulation synthesis does is, I'll give you just one example here. And this basically does LPC analysis on the flute sound and segregates the noise component with the resonant components. That's what LPC actually is. So here's that what I'm going to do now is actually increase the noise, bring down the resonance structure. And do the opposite. Get rid of the noise. So that's basically FMS. You sort of extract the features, modulate it, put it back together. Here's another one. This is one of my favorite ones. It's called harmonic expansion contraction. So speaking of physical modeling, I got this idea from physical modeling where in stringed instruments, the harmonic series actually sort of get expanded because of the thickness, the rigidity of the string. So I was like, oh, can I actually control it in such a way that I can modulate it as I wish? Comes to sort of sounds like a shakuhachi, which I thought was actually pretty cool. So it's sort of expanding the harmonic series and then towards the Nyquist in this expansion rate. Okay. And then there are all these features we can manipulate. And that's basically what feature modulation synthesis does. And that's also why it looks like this, right? You get the sound, you get the features, modulate, put it back together, and synthesize the sound. That's the FMS toolbox, which is pretty cool. At least I think it's pretty cool. I think I'll skip this one. But essentially, this is an example where I'm not sure if you have listened to a lot of electroacoustic music or computer music. It's a genre of music, and it's oftentimes not related to pitch or elements that are based on harmony and rhythm, and oftentimes it's based on timbre. So I was thinking to use MIR techniques to visualize those kinds of things. So here's an example of what I call a timbre-gram, right? So you have features on the axes, spectral centroids, spectral roll-off, zero crossing rate, and you can sort of hear and see where the sounds occupy this timbre space. And then how can you visualize music that's electroacoustic music in this way, not like just a waveform or a spectrogram? It's not that informative, although it does give you a lot of information, maybe too much information, right? So that's what this project was about. And okay. Here's another interesting, fun project. I'm sure that you guys have used smartphones before. Who has not used smartphones? Raise your hand. Who uses smartphones? Raise your hand. Okay. Somebody didn't raise his hand, so that's okay too. So back in the day when the first iPhone came out, the touch screen was like the interface, right? It's really great. It's really cool, very interactive, and the beauty there is that the touch screen can be or that the interface can be changed on the fly, and then you can do whatever you want to do, right? But it's kind of a bad interface in the sense that there's no tactile force feedback, right? Like when you click on a keyboard, you want to have that feel, right? You don't, I mean, the piano is that great invention where you actually have velocity, right? But back in the day, it didn't have velocity. So I was like, this is a great interface, but it lacks the tactile force feedback. And as a matter of fact, physical keyboards are much better than touchscreen keyboards. So if you want to write an essay, of course you use ChatGPT nowadays, so you don't write any essays. But in general, when you just kidding, if you want to write something quick, you use your keyboard, not your touch screen. It's not as fast, which means there's much more agility, and it's much faster to use a keyboard because there's tactile force feedback. And studies have shown that virtual interfaces require 8 times the force compared to physical keys, because you sort of try to press harder so that it does something, but it doesn't do anything if you press harder, right? Because that's not the way touch screens work. So it's like, okay, you get this sort of interesting revolution, and I think there was this 3D touch evolution where it starts buzzing when you click on things, but it's not really a tactile force feedback. So then I basically did this. Okay, quick question. And it took me basically like 15 minutes to build it. So it must be really easy. So basically I went to CVS, bought some rubber bands, came back, and I had an idea. I thought it was going to work, and it did work, as you can see here. How does it work is the question. It took me 15 minutes, so it can't be difficult.
I mean, it looks like you just strapped a rubber band around your device
Yeah,
and
that's it.
aligned it with the keys or the strings or whatever you're using.
That's exactly what I did. So, but how does it work? That's all I did. You're correct.
You're giving it an input and then you're getting back some vibration.
Nope, that
Or-
would take much more time. 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes to do it. Maybe 10 minutes, actually. Actually, just 5 minutes. Can be done in 2 minutes.
Is it like a capacitive touch principle? Like you're simulating what the touch would be like on the screen?
Basically, in principle, yes, but I didn't do anything. So essentially, I just looked at some software that existed, like what is that, Angry Bird and whatnot. And essentially, I put the rubber band on that string, and because when you interact with the string, you also interact with the touch screen. So when you touch it and release it, you can actually compute the velocity, right? But you think you're interacting with a string, but you're not. So it's an illusion. Therefore, I don't have to do anything. And it works as if you're plucking the string. That's how it works. So that's how it was actually done. And it's sending the displacement, right, of A to B displacement via OSC, and then I just use whatever to make the sound. And in case of that guitar, that bass thingy, I didn't do anything at all because you actually just touch the screen and it plays the strings. But I thought that was actually pretty interesting how you can create an illusion that you're doing something when it's not really what you're doing. And that's also this next idea. Maybe you can figure out how this works. Hold. Not this one, this one. How does this work?
Is it the sensor? It's just the sensor detecting, like, I'm not sure if it's the level your finger is at or
Yeah,
like
it's
if it's over the sensor.
basic machine learning. This is a thing called leap motion. I think it's called leap motion. And it tracks your hand motion. And all I got to do is track it and then generate some numbers that pertain to the motion. So machine learning to recognize the gestures and then just create sound. So you think you're interacting with a string, and you are, but the sounds are not created by the string. It's just a physical model of it. Same thing here. You train it to detect bowing. You can't really see the string because of the way the video is made. And the reason I use Lego is that the idea here was that, well, wouldn't it be really interesting to be able to build any instrument that you want, whether it's acoustically possible or not, with Lego? That was the idea. And the answer was, yeah, you can actually build anything. Just have the tracker, the hand tracker recognize the gestures, and then you just synthesize and have it do whatever you want it to do, right? Again, very easy to do, low cost, very accessible, just a little bit of maybe um, I don't know, doing something crazy. Interesting book. There's a book called Capitalism. Okay, the next project is called the hand phone, and essentially, I was when the smartphone came out, I thought that the smartphone was at times difficult to use. For example, let's say you're driving your car or you're in the subway and it's in your pocket or whatever. It's not easy to take it out and take the call, right? But you will really want to have like stuff in your ear sticking in. Do you want to have earbuds? No, I don't wear earbuds. Actually, I don't have the fancy, expensive iPhone earbuds. And I think it's inevitable you'll lose them at some point, one or both, and then you'll buy it again. I think that's their business model, to be quite honest. Uh, and you don't want to have like an RF thing in your head all day long anyway. And it's uncomfortable. And I think those of you that wear eyeglasses, we don't like to wear these things. We just wear it because we can't see, right? So
Yeah, I'm writing a paper about Apple design right now for another
yeah.
class that I'm taking over summer,
Uh-huh.
and they like make products like that purposely like easily breakable, like their chargers.
Yeah.
They're super easy to break. So you spend $80 on their site to pay for a charger, the little converter, so it can actually charge your iPhone, and then a base too.
Yeah, it's a great business model, right? And it is a business. So I'm not saying it's bad nor good. I'm just saying that's just the way it is. And I'm not judging it in such a way. I'm just saying I'll lose it for sure, 100%. These little things just
Me,
because
me too.
yeah, it's just in that therefore I don't buy it because I know I'll use it and lose it and it's like $80, whatever the cost is of these things. And I don't want to keep on buying it because if you become dependent on it, then you'll keep on buying it. And I don't have enough money actually to do that. So that's how the hand phone came about. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to be able to just use your hand to make a call and receive a call? Just your hand. And essentially what I did is I built this little thing with uh, um, these transducers that are at the ultra frequency range. So you can't hear it, but if it bounces or uh, uh, um, um, bounces off a wall or some obstacle, you can actually the ultrasonic transducers create sound. So I was imagining that this can be built into those like smartwatches and whatnot. And these days I don't even wear a watch. And basically what it does is it shoots it's like a laser essentially, sound laser. It shoots the sound here and it goes into your ears. So you sort of like talking to the hand essentially, right? And you can sort of like actually direct the sounds this way and that way. And that's why I called it the hand phone. And I thought, yeah, this is like a hand phone. And in Korea, smartphones are called hand phones. So I thought that was pretty funny. So that was another project I was doing. And one of the main projects that I've been involved in since 2010 is this project called Citigram. I think Jingwei may remember this. I think she probably does.
Yeah, I remember this. Citigram. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, and at that time there was a Japanese guy, Toshi.
Toshi, yeah.
Yeah. And he also did something in this project, and yeah, I remember this. And you
Yeah.
are bringing this smaller like device recorder like around the New York City and to record the city
Right.
sound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll explain what this is. And it's essentially trying to sound map our world in 3D. And what does that mean? So 3D is not like 3 dimensions, but data-driven, community-driven, and art-driven. And I'll explain what that actually means. So Citigram is a project where I try to create a real-time sound map. And why? Because they don't exist, right? And as I said, I like to do things that either don't exist or not many people are doing. So as you know, traditional maps are fixed, static, and are slowly changing, right? So this is like a map of New York City, and these things don't quickly change. So the sampling rate is pretty slow for actual maps, and use it to go from place A to place B. Very useful, right? But then the question is, what about sound maps? Can you hear sounds, or can you sort of see what's going on, or capture what's going on in spaces? And the answer is maybe. But there are many challenges, and one challenge is obviously this, right? Now you hear it, or now you see it, now you don't, right? Sound quickly dissipates, attenuates 1 over r squared, right? Exponentially. And it's never frozen in time like buildings. And obviously buildings also get, you know, demolished or they disappear, but it takes a lot of time for those things to happen. But with sound, it dissipates, attenuates, and disappears instantaneously, essentially. So that's one big problem. So you need a high sampling rate for sound. And then because of the 1/r square relationship, attenuation, exponential attenuation of sound, you need all these sensors in great number, right, over a given area. And then how do you do that? So the space, time, and data issue, spatial temporal granularity issue is a big, big challenge because you need a lot of sensors, right? And how do you do that? Well, the main, one could say, oh, you do it by just throwing money at it, but that's not a solution. That's like saying, oh, you throw money at it. No, you do it so that it's cheap. You do it so that it's accessible. You do it so that everyone can do it, more or less. So that's how the Citigram project came about. So back in the day, I was using these mini computers, which were not mini, and but they worked, right? So like a hard case and all this stuff, and it worked pretty nicely. And then these single board computers came about, like the Raspberry Pi #1, and which was like, wow, that's actually pretty cool. But they were not powerful enough back in the day, right? And then I looked into these like less than $100 mini PCs, and this is basically an Android machine without any of the I/O. That's why it's so cheap. So it has like a quad core system, USB, HDMI, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, everything built in. So it's like, oh, I can just write Android apps to make this into a sensor, right? So that was pretty cool. But then writing apps is not so much fun. They update their OS, and it's just didn't want to deal with it. And then a few years later, single board computers actually became fast, like Raspberry Pi 2s and 3s, and you could actually do AI on it, right? And it doesn't have to do like a really heavy AI, but if you have a lot of these things, you can do a lot of heavy AI. So I started using Raspberry Pis, and then I went a step beyond that, where it's not just like a Raspberry Pi, but it's essentially towards a zero cost sensor idea. And what does that mean? Well, then you basically, how do you enable that? So uh, all this code that was written in different languages and systems, I got rid of it and made everything into JavaScript and Node.js, so that any device that can run JavaScript, like a web browser or like a Electron type Node.js type thing that can run on your desktop or anything, can be rendered into a sensor. So this ideal that any device or most devices, including a tablet, a desktop, laptop, phablet, whatnot, and probably your Tesla or your refrigerator, which are all tablets, they can run this code. And if they have a mic installed or an external mic, like via Bluetooth, that can be made into a sensor. So that's why I went into JavaScript, and that's how I'm working with this. That's how I'm working the Citigram. So ultra low sensors, and I'll just skip this one. And one other thing that I found very important is that when you want to have sensors outside of the home, right? Each home, what does each home have? And I think in many cases, or most cases, each home has Wi-Fi, right? That's like a pretty reasonable assumption. Okay, you have Wi-Fi. Do you have a window? Yes. So can you have like can you build a sticker that sticks to your window as the mic? Yes, that would be pretty cool. And that's how I came up with the sticker mic idea. And I built a sticker mic so that you can stick it outside the window, connect it to your device, and off you go. So web browser, mic, internet, and Windows, all you need to become, I call these people streamers. And here's a small, short video on Citigram. And the interface is something that you all are familiar with, which is this thing called this planet Earth interface. And you see these little sticks that they depict the energy levels. You can click on it. Yeah, I was in Boston at that time, and it shows you the energy levels with second by second, minute by minute, and hour resolution. So this idea that seeing is believing, right? You cannot see sound, but this is like the next closest thing as to being able to see the sound wherever you install these sensors. Well, yeah, then there's this other project that came about maybe 7, 8 years ago. It's called Soundscaper. Can I run this? I think I can. Let me see. You hear it? It's essentially how can you synthesize soundscapes so that they continue forever, but not be looping forever so that it sounds like you're looping. That was the idea. That's number one. Number two is how can you do it and make the soundscapes louder, not by increasing the volume, because that's not louder. Just it sounds fake, right? And that's where MI out and that stuff comes into play. So I can actually make it louder by analyzing the sound and loop it so that right, it becomes louder and it loops forever, although it's not actually looping forever. So you do like segmentation and like analysis, and it becomes more and more dense, and then less dense, more dense. So it's the actual sounds of that space, and you resynthesize it. And I thought that was actually a cool way to resynthesize soundscapes without not by making just increasing or scaling the amplitudes, right? Actually making it sound louder and softer by changing the density and the texture of it. So that's
So-
what Soundscaper was.
Were you able to do that just by taking like you recorded time over like a set span? And then basically what you were doing is instead of like synthesizing just time at one span, you were synthesizing time at multiple like over the entire span, then kind of condensing it down or like overlaying it over itself.
It's actually easier than that. So I just got like a sound sample from freesound.org. I go there for all my sounds. And there was like this restaurant sound, and this
Mm.
is the energy levels of that sound. And so sort of my theory is that I haven't written a paper on it. So if you guys are interested, I'm happy to write it with you. But it's this idea that I think you don't have infinite levels of dynamics, right? In music, you have like, let's say, triple piano, pianissimo, piano, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo, triple fortes, right? There's a reason for that. So of course you have dynamics in between those, but those are not that important. So my theory is that they are essentially like finite levels of dynamics that are actually important, and that's what I did here. So I basically analyzed the sound and segmented all those, the piano sounds, the mezzo piano sounds, the forte sounds, fortissimo sounds, and I sort of grouped them all together. And that's what this guy is doing. It's playing those and stitching it together. So it's basically sound stitching, right? With overlap and add. And then it sounds like it's continuous, right? And it's randomly selecting them so that it doesn't always repeat the same way. Because it's noise based, you don't hear the patterns. Does that make sense? Simple idea. So all these things that I introduced to you are very simple ideas. At the same time, simple ideas are not easy to come by because everything is, I think, seems complicated, but like FM synthesis is a very simple idea, right? You just modulate the frequency, you get like all these sidebands. Physical modeling, it's just a feedback, plug straight physical modeling is just a feedback IR filter, a low pass filter. It's like so simple, right? So, which kind of makes sense. So that's how I came up with this one, and I think it works pretty well. And the reason I came up with this one is, again, those two things, right? Making it loop forever, being able to make it louder and softer, not by increasing the volume level or the amplitude levels, but making more dense, less dense, as if it were happening in that space, like a more crowded space, less crowded space. And also being able to employ that on a mapping system, right? You click here and you know what that, let's say, Times Square sounds like. Just take a sample, maybe an hour long or whatever, or 24 hours long, right? That's all you need. And then you can resynthesize it, or maybe 48 hours long. I mean, that's like nothing these days, right? Or maybe like a week long, and then you can resynthesize it. Or maybe, and I'm like now sort of like thinking aloud here. You take one during the summer, maybe spring, fall, winter, right? And have a nice sort of database of that. And you will repeat that according to what time it is, if it's raining and what. You can resynthesize that space pretty accurately.
Have you seen like those YouTube videos where they do like ambient sound of like a place or something like that? I feel
Yeah,
like this would be a great way to like mass produce those. Like you can
exactly.
make a lot of money doing this.
So if you want to help me do this, I'm all open here. So the one thing that I don't have is time. So what I try to do always is like proof of concept, right? And does this idea work? That's what I'm really most interested in. But I mean, then anyway, but I'm not even kidding. So if you're interested in these kinds of things, and that's what I mean by this is like a hobby, right? You have these ideas, and then you're like, hey, let's try this out. And it's like, and exactly those ambient things that they like hours and hours of recordings on YouTube. It's cool, but you can resynthesize any space actually. And then think about this, you employ AI into it and fill in the gaps. So AI plus real sounds and mix it up like a hybrid. I think it's going to be very hard to tell the difference. And then you can also predict the future. That's another thing. Given these parameters or these features, we can recreate these soundscapes that don't even exist. Or you go back 10,000 years from today, these are the parameters. What did it sound like 10,000 years ago? Great question. I don't know. But I digress. Okay.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, these are just basically ideas. And so that the first D, remember the sound mapping our world in 3D, right? The first D was the data driven. So that's the technology. So I always view technology as like data driven, right? Then the second D is community driven. So the way I build Citigram the sensors is that, yeah, do you have a web browser? Yes, ka-chink. Do you have Wi-Fi? Check. Do you have a window? Check. Community driven. You can harness the community because they have access to those three things, and that's how you can scale something that everybody has, right? That's why the smartphone is so popular, or the web browser, or YouTube is so popular, right? The people provide the content, right? Then there's the third D, which is the art driven. So why art driven? Well, music is the universal language of humankind. Every culture has music of some form or shape, and it's a shared um, cultural it's a shared culture across the universe, actually. So what better way to bring awareness to these things through the power of music? So that's a third D. Because I'm also a composer and a musician, I like to do these things. And these are all these events that I've had in the past, hackathons, workshops, concerts, and all these things. Here's an example. This was actually installation work done in 2018-19. The visualizing and reinterpreting all the sound data that's coming from different places and spaces. And in the ceiling, I had like a matrix of 25 Raspberry Pis. Each has their own speaker. And you create this immersive, synthetic, artistic soundscape. Right? Kind of interesting, I thought. And here's another piece that I did in 2016. And this was actually at Carnegie Hall. Here's me on the bass, and I put in a bass part because I wanted to play at Carnegie Hall. And this is called Big Noise, Big Cities, Big Data, B flat flat. And it's this idea that you're jamming with planet Earth, in a sense, right? It's the data, the sensors, the sense, the stage, this Carnegie Hall, and you're now playing with planet Earth. But most recently, just this past summer, let's see if I have a link to that. This is actually pretty cool. Just came back from Uruguay, and this was kind of funny. He sent me this thing. This is one of my former students from NYU, unrelated to that. But let's see. There's a video that we, not we, but somebody made, and it's called The Sonic Time Machine. It's this place.
La máquina sonora del tiempo busca traer sonidos del pasado al presente a través de la memoria colectiva sonora, en este caso del frigorífico Anglo, y también por medio de documentación que hemos encontrado aquí en el museo. Y la idea de este proyecto surge a partir de una visita que hice cuando era niño, en el cual siempre se nos decía, imagínense cómo sonaba esta fábrica. Y eso siempre ha quedado en mi memoria, y hoy estamos acá para poder traer a la vida esos sonidos, que el espacio en sí mismo pueda contar su propia historia a través de los diferentes elementos no visuales que forman parte de un lugar.
Yeah, the Sonic Time Machine project, I suppose, started around 2.5, 3 years ago, something like 2 years ago, I would say. And it's a pretty interesting project as we're approaching this idea where spaces become places, and each of these places and spaces have sonic traces, and they disappear rapidly. So the memory of these sonic idiosyncrasies and characteristics that describe a space are lost forever. It's not like a picture where you can take a picture and you can see everything. Sound is necessarily a medium that changes and dies with time. So that's something that is lost unless we recapture it and try to recreate it. And that's what we try to do here. So that through the lens. Yeah, and it goes on for a little while, but basically so you can sort of see how Soundscaper falls into this, right? So we did some research, collected sounds, and we are trying to recreate sounds from the 1940s, 50s, and 1930s, how that factory sounded like. And it's very meaningful for that community. They have lost that sound. And how can you do it with technology, an immersive environment, not for the sake of it being immersive, but if you walk in there, I was actually pretty amazed how it sounded. I was very surprised. And especially in the evenings when it's dark, it actually sounds like you are back in time. And it's the immersive technology is not the important part, but that's would be the right technology to do these things. And I did that already in 2018. So it was like 6 years in the making, in a sense. So that's the Sonic Time Machine. So bringing back the past through the lens of sound, right? Yeah, and there's other things. So I'm also involved with startups. So this is a startup I started a few years ago.
If this is what it sounds like at your house, first off, we are so sorry. Second, you are definitely not alone. Introducing Noisy, your new personal assistant in the fight for the right to have some peace and quiet. Noisy uses AI-powered smart sensing technology to record, map, track, and share in real time the noise pollution created by airplanes around your home. Noisy records the date, time, and decibel level of airplanes. It combines this information with public sources to identify the aircraft and even the airline causing the noise. Noisy can even automatically send a detailed complaint through existing online airport complaint portals for those that have them. Noisy technology is a result of 8 years of research and development by
This was in 2018, so it's more than 8 years, but fast forward, here's like a visualization of all the airplanes around Chicago Airport. So we're tracking the airplanes, 3D positioning, the speed, the sounds that they make, so that they know what the noise levels are that are caused by airplanes. Here's another visualization. This is day, this is time, and this axis is dBA. So you can sort of see like from 12 midnight till like 6 a.m. nothing happened, then boom, all these airplanes happening. It's kind of insane, actually. If you haven't been to if you don't live near airports, you don't know what the community there is experiencing. Here's the AI, and I think Jingwei also knows about this project. She was helping me in this project, actually. And this is the AI detecting the airplanes opposed to, let's say, the lawnmower or the dog barking, right? And CNNs are great for this type of thing. All you need is essentially a lot of ground truth data, and it does like a really amazing job, I want to say. And from that also, I formed a new trio recently. So started in 2023. This trio is called April 33. Where does that name come from? You guys know John Cage? John Cage is a famous
Yeah,
composer.
4 minutes and 33 seconds.
So,
Oh,
April-
yeah, I see. 4:33.
and it's about serenity. And this piece is about John Cage's piece, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, is actually 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence, which is, check it out. It's an interesting piece. It's a conceptual piece, right? And I thought serenity, silence, calmness, especially during COVID, all of us experienced it. I lived in New York at that time, and the city was dead quiet, which brought to the surface all the little things that exist behind the noise of cacophony. And that's how this band was formed, in that sort of spirit. Here's a piece that I wrote for April 33, and this is Maria and Lucia. They are part of the On Trio, very famous On Trio sisters. And this one is called Kamyon 3. And Kamyon is similar to Chinese. It means mask. It has to do with masking, the masking effect. MP3, that's masking. And then how COVID unmasked the sounds that were in the background. and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think I'll end it here. This is another, I think, cool startup. So I can follow up at some other point, but essentially, how can we detect your heartbeat rate through voice? So make a call and we can detect your heartbeat rate. That's vital audio. So that's another startup that I'm the CSO of. So in the Get Noise, I'm the CTO. That was Ontrio. There's another one. This is called Start, and this is helping people pronounce the R letter, the American R, which is difficult, like hamburger. So this is called the Start project, and this is using LPC to teach you how to articulate the R. And what does the future hold? I have no idea. And that's basically it for today. Any quick questions? And yeah, and you can just look me up on the internet and send me an email at thp@purdue.edu. There's no THP at Purdue apparently, so I'm the first THP, Taeyong Park at Purdue.edu. But I'm totally serious. If you want to collaborate on some of these projects, there's many more, as you can probably imagine, and have fun and write some papers. Why not? Papers are fun to write. It's like putting your thought onto paper format. Essentially, that's what it is. And if you like to hack stuff together, do contact me and let's have fun.
You said
Okay.
your email is just thp@purdue.edu.
Yeah, or just get it from Jingwei. She has it, but it's THP at
Okay.
Purdue.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. That was awesome.
Yes,
Okay.
thanks for coming, Professor Park, and talk to you later. Thanks so much for
Talk to you
this
later.
nice talk. And yeah,
Okay.
I'll email you later for sure.
All right. Have fun,
Have
guys.
a good summer.
Take care.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye. Bye.